A young woman surrounded by luxury walks out of a bank, totally unaware she's being hunted. But when danger strikes, her canine dog does something no one ever could have imagined. The New York City sky was heavy that morning, laden with clouds that promised a storm. In the imposing Wilson family mansion, located in the sophisticated Upper East Side neighborhood, Emily Wilson adjusted her purse strap while checking her reflection in the mirror. At 17, she inherited not only the name of one of the country's most influential families, but also the responsibility and demands that came with it. "Are you sure you need to go personally?" asked Rebecca Wilson, her mother, entering the room with that elegant air that never abandoned her, even on the most ordinary mornings. She wore a beige tailored suit that enhanced her perfectly arranged blonde hair. "Mom, you yourself said these documents are extremely sensitive. I can't trust just anyone." Emily turned, noticing a shadow of concern in her mother's gaze that she tried to disguise with a forced smile. Thor, her faithful four-legged companion, a robust and imposing Rottweiler, remained near the door. The dog, trained from puppyhood for high-security missions, was not just a pet but a true guardian. That morning his behavior was different, more alert, sniffing the air insistently. "All right, darling, but promise you'll return right after," picking up the envelope. "And keep Thor close by at all times." Rebecca approached her daughter, adjusting a strand of her brown hair. "Afterward, we'll talk about that proposal from Tech Giant. They're insisting on a meeting this week." "Tech Giant again?" Emily frowned. "Mom, why are they so interested in our technology company? Dad always said we should be suspicious of offers that seem too good to be true." An uncomfortable silence hung in the air. Rebecca looked away, pretending to arrange some objects on the dressing table. "To your father. He had his reasons for being cautious. But perhaps it's time we considered strategic partnerships." Emily noticed the hesitation in her mother's voice, but decided not to press the matter at that moment. There was something Rebecca wasn't saying, information that got stuck in her throat whenever the subject was the future of the company left by Frank Wilson. As she descended the mansion's marble staircase, Thor walked ahead, his heightened senses capturing every sound, every suspicious movement. The driver, Charles, a trusted man who had been with the family for more than 10 years, waited by the armored car. "Good morning, Miss Emily. Traffic is heavy today, but we'll arrive at the scheduled time," he said, opening the vehicle's rear door. During the journey to Wall Street, Emily observed the city through the tinted windows. New York seethed with its characteristic energy, hurried executives walking on sidewalks, the intense movement that defined the country's financial center. But something bothered her, an inexplicable feeling as if invisible eyes were watching her. Thor, seated beside her, remained alert. Suddenly, he let out a low growl, almost imperceptible, directing his gaze toward a black motorcycle that had been following them for several blocks. The rider, dressed completely in black and wearing a mirrored helmet, maintained a constant distance. "Charles," Emily called, trying to keep her voice calm. "Is that motorcycle following us?" The driver looked in the rearview mirror, his hands closing more firmly on the steering wheel. "Maybe it's a coincidence, miss, but I'll stay alert." When they arrived at the bank, Emily breathed a sigh of relief, seeing the normal flow of customers and employees. 2 security guards at the entrance, executives in impeccable suits, the key, familiar and secure environment she knew well. Thor remained in the car with Charles, but his eyes didn't stray from the bank's door for even a second. Inside the bank, the family's personal manager, Dr. Martha Stevens, greeted her with her usual cordiality. "Miss Wilson, what a pleasure to see you. The envelope your mother requested is here." She handed her a sealed brown envelope, apparently ordinary, but carrying the weight of secrets Emily still didn't understand. "Dr. Stevens, may I ask a question? Is this type of financial transaction normal?" Emily held the envelope, feeling a strange texture in the paper. The manager hesitated for a moment. "Your mother didn't discuss the details with me, dear. She only said it was related to the business your father left behind. Delicate matters." Upon returning to the car, Emily noticed that the motorcycle was still there, now accompanied by a silver car with tinted windows. Thor immediately sensed her tension, positioning himself protectively. It was then that she discovered something strange about the envelope, a small bluish mark on the side, almost imperceptible. "Charles, we need to return home, now." Her voice carried an urgency that the driver immediately understood. As the car traveled through the streets of New York, Emily felt that this morning would mark the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The envelope in her hands wasn't just a document. It was the key to secrets that someone was willing to do much to protect or to steal. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. The Wilson mansion had never seemed so imposing, and at the same time so vulnerable in Emily's eyes. When the armored car entered the electronic gate, she felt momentary relief, but Thor remained restless, sniffing the air as if detecting something human senses couldn't capture. "Charles, did you notice anything strange during the return trip?" she asked as she got out of the vehicle, the envelope still firmly in her hands. The driver hesitated, running his hand through his graying hair. "Miss, I've worked for your family for more than a decade. I know the streets of New York like the back of my hand, and I can assure you we were followed. But I lost track of them when we entered the Upper East Side." Inside the mansion, Rebecca was waiting in the living room, flipping through magazines with poorly disguised nervousness. Upon seeing her daughter, she quickly stood up, relief etched on her face. "Thank God you're back. Did you get the envelope?" Rebecca approached, extending her hands, but Emily took a step back. "Mom, I need you to explain what's really happening." "We were followed, and this envelope has a strange mark that shouldn't be there." Emily showed the bluish mark, which under the natural light of the room became even more evident. Rebecca's face paled. "A mark? What kind of mark?" "It looks like ink, but I'm not sure, and there's something else." Emily took a deep breath. "The bank manager, Dr. Stevens, mentioned they were delicate matters left by Dad. What matters are those, Mom?" Rebecca walked to the window, observing the impeccably maintained garden. "Your question is fair, Emily. Perhaps it's time you knew some truths about the empire your father built." "Truths? What truths?" Emily's voice carried a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Sit down, dear." Rebecca gestured toward the Italian leather sofa. "Your father, Frank, wasn't just a brilliant businessman in the technology field. He possessed very valuable information about competitors, about businesses that could compromise powerful people." Thor positioned himself near Emily, as if sensing that important revelations were coming. The young woman stroked the animal's head, seeking comfort in his reassuring presence. "What kind of information, Mom?" "Fraudulent contracts, bribery proposals, documents that prove irregularities in public bidding involving major corporations." Rebecca turned to her daughter, her eyes reflecting years of kept secrets. "Tech Giant, the company I mentioned this morning, was one of those your father investigated. They found out and have been trying to pressure us ever since." Emily felt the ground shake beneath her feet. "Pressure us how?" "Offers to buy our company for ridiculous values, veiled threats, and now—" Rebecca pointed to the envelope. "This." "But why didn't you tell me before? Why did you hide all this from me?" Tears began to form in Rebecca's eyes. "Because I wanted to protect you, Emily. You lost your father too early. I didn't want you to also lose your innocence about the business world. But now I see I can no longer protect you from reality." The mansion's telephone rang, interrupting the tense moment. Charles appeared at the door. "Mrs. Wilson, it's someone from Tech Giant. They say it's urgent and has to do with Miss Emily." Mother and daughter exchanged glances. Rebecca gestured for Charles to transfer the call to the living room phone. "Hello?" Rebecca's voice sounded controlled, but Emily noticed the tremor in her hands. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Robert Sullivan, Vice President of Tech Giant. I believe your daughter experienced some setbacks this morning. We would like to propose a meeting today to discuss an amicable solution for all involved." Emily gestured for her mother to activate the speakerphone. "Mr. Sullivan, what kind of setbacks are you referring to?" "Well, Mrs. Wilson, we don't need to pretend. We know you possess certain information that your late husband collected over the years. Information that, let's agree, would be better utilized in more competent hands." The man's audacity left Emily indignant. "Are you threatening us?" "Not at all, Miss Emily. I'm offering a business opportunity, a partnership that could be very profitable for your family, as well as ensuring that certain information remains safe." Rebecca abruptly hung up the phone. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by Thor's heavy breathing, who remained alert. "Mom, they know I was at the bank today. How is that possible?" "I don't know, darling. But one thing is certain, we can no longer trust anyone but ourselves." Rebecca hugged her daughter, and Thor, of course. As if understanding he was being mentioned, the dog approached, placing his massive head on Emily's lap. At that moment, the young woman understood that her life had completely changed, and that the secrets kept for years were finally coming to light, bringing with them dangers she never imagined existed. The night had fallen over New York, but in the Wilson mansion, sleep was far from coming. Emily remained in her suite, observing the envelope on the desk. The bluish mark seemed to pulse under the lamplight, as if guarding secrets that cried out to be revealed. Thor, lying near the door, suddenly raised his head. His ears moved, capturing a sound that Emily couldn't perceive. The dog headed to the window, placing his front paws on the windowsill and observing the garden with redoubled attention. "What is it, Thor? Are you seeing something out there?" Emily approached the window, but the darkness of the garden revealed nothing beyond the familiar silhouettes of trees and the fountain. A soft knock on the door made her start. "Hem, may I come in?" It was Rebecca's voice. "Of course, Mom." Rebecca entered carrying a tray with chamomile tea, but her worried countenance revealed that this wasn't just a casual maternal visit. "Darling, I need you to see something. Something your father left for you, but that I thought would never be necessary to reveal." Emily furrowed her brow. "What thing?" "Come with me. Let's go to your father's office." Frank Wilson's office remained practically untouched since his departure. The shelves filled with technology and business books, the mahogany desk with its leather chair, the diplomas and certificates on the walls, all preserved as a sanctuary to memory. Rebecca headed to a painting that depicted New York City seen from above. With precise movements, she pressed a specific sequence of points on the frame. To Emily's surprise, the painting slid to the side, revealing a digital safe embedded in the wall. "Dad had a secret safe?" Emily couldn't hide her astonishment. "Your father was a man who believed in precautions, dear. He always said that in a world of information, whoever controlled it would have the power." Rebecca typed a sequence of numbers on the digital panel. "The date of your birth." The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, there were some documents, a flash drive, and a sealed letter with Emily's name written in Frank's elegant handwriting. "A letter for me." Emily's hands trembled slightly as she picked up the envelope. "Read it, darling. It's important that you understand everything." Emily broke the seal and unfolded the handwritten sheets. Her father's familiar handwriting immediately transported her to memories of when he helped her with homework. "My dear Emily, if you're reading this letter, it means the secrets I kept have finally come to light. Forgive me for not being completely honest about the nature of my business. Over the years, I discovered irregularities in large corporations that could harm thousands of people. I collected evidence, not to blackmail, but to protect the most vulnerable. The flash drive in this safe contains information about tech giant and other companies that tried to silence investigations into their questionable practices. Use this information wisely, my daughter, and always trust Thor. He was trained not only to protect you physically, but also to find what others try to hide." "Protect the most vulnerable?" Emily looked at her mother, seeking clarification. "Your father discovered that tech giant was diverting funds from social technology projects for underprivileged neighborhoods. Millions that should have brought internet and digital education to underprivileged children were being directed to offshore accounts." Rebecca sighed deeply. "He collected evidence for months." Emily connected the flash drive to the office computer. The screen filled with spreadsheets, scanned documents, and audio recordings. It was a true investigative archive. "Mom, this is incredible. Dad was doing investigative journalism work." But why didn't he turn all this over to the authorities? He tried, darling, but he discovered that some authorities were also involved. That's why he decided to keep the evidence safe until he found truly trustworthy people to deliver it to. At that moment, Thor began sniffing insistently near the office desk. The dog lightly scratched the wood, drawing attention to something specific. What is Thor trying to show us? Emily knelt down, observing the animal's behavior. Thor continued sniffing until he found a small secret drawer in the desk pedestal. Inside it was a device the size of a credit card, with the Wilson Company logo embossed in low relief. A GPS tracker? Rebecca examined the object. Not exactly. Emily read the technical instructions engraved on the back. It's a frequency decoder. Dad wrote here that it's used to intercept encrypted communications. The house phone rang again. This time, Charles appeared at the office door with a grave expression. Ladies, excuse the interruption, but there's someone at the gate. They say they're from the police. Emily and Rebecca exchanged glances. Police? At this hour of the night? Ma'am, they're showing a search warrant. They claim to be investigating suspicious activities related to Mr. Frank's company. That's impossible, exclaimed Rebecca. Frank never did anything illegal. Emily quickly stored the flash drive and decoder in a small bag. Mom, they're coming after the evidence Dad collected. We need to protect this information. Thor, sensing the growing tension, positioned himself beside Emily, ready for any eventuality. The young woman stroked the animal's fur, feeling that Thor's loyalty and intelligence would be fundamental in the challenges to come. Charles, said Emily with determination, tell the police we'll attend to them shortly. But first, we need a few minutes to organize ourselves. As Charles withdrew, Emily looked at her mother with a new resolution in her eyes. Mom, we won't let them destroy Dad's work. This information can help many people. The minutes seemed eternal as Emily and Rebecca descended the mansion stairs toward the entrance hall. Thor walked between them, his protective instinct on high alert. Through the windows, they could see the flashing lights of police cars parked outside the gate. Mum, something isn't right, Emily murmured, adjusting the bag where she had hidden the flash drive and decoder. Dad always said that search warrants aren't executed at night, especially not in corporate cases. Rebecca stopped abruptly, an expression of horror taking over her face. My God, Emily, what if they're not real police? Before they could fully process this possibility, Charles appeared again, this time with an expression of relief. Ladies, I apologize for the alarm. I checked the documentation more carefully and discovered it's a fake. There is no search warrant, and the uniforms have obvious irregularities. A fake? Emily felt a mixture of relief and indignation. Who would have the audacity to impersonate police officers? People who are very desperate to get what they want, answered a familiar voice coming from the living room door. The three people turned in surprise. There stood Robert Sullivan, the tech giant vice president who had called earlier, accompanied by an elegant woman Emily didn't recognize. How did you get in here? Exclaimed Rebecca, instinctively positioning herself between her daughter and the intruders. Calm down, Mrs. Wilson. We didn't come to cause problems. Robert raised his hands in a sign of peace. Allow me to introduce Dr. Patricia Adams, our legal consultant. We're here for a civilized conversation. Thor growled low but remained beside Emily, waiting for a command. The young woman placed her hand on the animal's head, both to calm him and to feel more secure. Civilized conversation. After trying to impersonate police officers? Emily's voice carried indignation. This is trespassing. Miss Emily, the police outside aren't ours. We came through the back of the property because we knew you wouldn't receive us voluntarily, explained Dr. Adams with a professional smile. And as for trespassing, well, we have some information that might change your perspective on that. Rebecca approached Charles. Call the real police now. I wouldn't do that if I were you, interjected Robert, removing a tablet from his executive briefcase. Before making any hasty decisions, I think you should see this. On the tablet screen, AI video began playing that made Rebecca's blood freeze. It was Frank Wilson in his office, talking with a man Emily recognized as a local politician. That meeting never happened. whispered Rebecca, but her voice trembled. Yes, it did, Mrs. Wilson. 3 years ago, your husband received a bribe, offered to facilitate a public bid, and he accepted it. Robert paused the video at a moment where Frank appeared to be receiving an envelope. We have evidence that $50,000 were deposited in an offshore account linked to your company. Emily felt the world spin. That's a lie. Dad would never do something like that. Darling, I don't believe it either, but... Rebecca stared fixedly at the video, trying to process what she was seeing. There is an explanation, continued Dr. Adams. Your husband was investigating, but he got more involved than he should have. When he discovered he had become an unwitting accomplice, he tried to reverse the situation by collecting evidence against other involved parties, including evidence against our company, added Robert. Evidence that, if disclosed, would harm not only Tech Giant, but dozens of other companies and thousands of jobs. Emily took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. And what do you want exactly? Simple. We want the evidence your father collected. In exchange, we guarantee that this video will never be disclosed and that Frank Wilson's reputation will remain intact. Robert closed the tablet. Additionally, we offer a considerable sum for the acquisition of your company. Blackmail, murmured Rebecca. Pure blackmail. We prefer to call it a mutually beneficial agreement, corrected Dr. Adams. You two are young and have your whole lives ahead of you. Why carry the weight of secrets that can destroy so many lives? At that moment, Thor began sniffing in Dr. Adams's direction. The dog approached her, completely ignoring Robert, and began showing signs of recognition. Thor knows you, asked Emily, observing the animal's strange behavior. Dr. Adams hesitated for a moment, a shadow of discomfort passing over her face. Well, I've had the opportunity to meet your father on some professional occasions. Perhaps the dog remembers my scent. But Emily noticed something more in Thor's behavior. It wasn't just recognition, it was suspicion. The dog was alerting about something his canine intuition detected. You know what? Said Emily, straightening her shoulders with renewed determination. I don't believe you. My father may have made mistakes, but he would never do something that intentionally harmed innocent people. Miss Emily, be reasonable, insisted Robert. We're offering an elegant solution to a complex problem. The elegant solution would be for you to leave our house before we call the real police, retorted Emily. And if you try to blackmail us again, all the evidence my father collected will be delivered to the most respected newspapers in the country. Dr. Adams' professional smile dissolved. You have no idea what you're getting into, girls. There are much bigger interests at stake. Then let them play, replied Emily, surprising herself with her own courage, but it won't be with us. Robert and Dr. Adams exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this reaction. Very well, Robert finally said. But remember, we offered you the opportunity to resolve this amicably. If you choose the difficult path, the consequences will be entirely yours. After the intruders left, Emily hugged Thor tightly. Thank you. My faithful companion, you helped me realize we can't trust them. Rebecca approached her daughter, pride and concern mixed in her gaze. Emily, you were very brave, but now we need to find out what the real truth is about your father. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. The early morning found Emily and Rebecca in Frank's office, surrounded by documents, digital files, and printed pages scattered across the mahogany desk. The decoder found by Thor had revealed its true purpose: to intercept Tech Giant's own communications, allowing Frank to discover the real extent of the corruption. Mum, look at this, said Emily, pointing to an audio recording on the computer. It's Dad talking to someone 3 days before he left us. Rebecca approached, adjusting her glasses. Frank's familiar voice echoed through the room. Dr. Henry, I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. I discovered that Tech Giant isn't just diverting funds from social projects. They're using children from underprivileged communities as guinea pigs to test experimental software without parental authorization. Frank, that's very serious. Do you have evidence? I have photos, documents, secretly recorded testimonies. But I also discovered something worse. There's an infiltrator in my own company, someone very close who's passing information to them. The recording continued but was interrupted by external noises. Frank seemed concerned, speaking in lower tones. Someone's coming, Dr. Henry. If something happens to me, the evidence is protected. My daughter Emily will know what to do when the time comes, and Thor has been trained to protect her and to find the clues I left. Tears rolled down Rebecca's face. So, your father really was protecting vulnerable children. And there was a traitor among us. Mom, said Emily with a sudden realization, remember when Dr. Adams said she had already met Dad on professional occasions, and how Thor reacted strangely to her? You think she's the infiltrator? Before they could continue the conversation, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Charles appeared at the door, but his behavior was different. Nervous, restless. Ladies, excuse the intrusion, but I need to talk to you about something important. He entered the room, closing the door behind him. It's about tonight's events. Thor immediately stood up, positioning himself between Charles and the two women. The dog began to growl low, a signal Emily had already learned to interpret. Charles, Thor is acting strangely with you. Is there something you haven't told us? Asked Emily, keeping her voice firm. The driver took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. Ladies, I made a terrible mistake. 6 months ago, Tech Giant approached me. They knew I had gambling debts, that I was desperate. They offered money in exchange for information about the family's routines. Rebecca rose abruptly. Charles, how could you? I never imagined it would result in something like this. They said it was just market research, competitive analysis. I never thought they would put Miss Emily in danger. Charles began to cry. When I saw those men following you today, I realized the gravity of what I had done. Emily felt a mixture of betrayal and compassion. Was it you who told them about my trip to the bank? Yes, but I didn't know they would intercept you. I thought it was just to monitor the company's financial movements. Charles knelt. Please forgive me. I came to confess because I can no longer live with this guilt. Thor approached Charles, sniffing him intensely. To everyone's surprise, the dog showed no aggression, but rather a kind of understanding. The animal had been trained to detect lies and clearly perceived that Charles was being sincere in his remorse. Charles, said Rebecca with a controlled voice, what other information did you pass to them? Your activity schedules, places you frequent, and, he hesitated, the access codes to the mansion's security system. The security codes? Emily felt a chill down her spine. You mean they can enter here whenever they want? Not anymore. I changed all the codes after realizing what was happening. But ladies, there's something else you need to know. Charles stood up, wiping away his tears. During these meetings with Tech Giant, I met other employees from competing companies. They were all co-opted in the same way. I discovered they have a network of informants spread throughout New York. Emily began to connect the pieces of the puzzle, a corporate espionage network, and Dad discovered this. Exactly. Mr. Frank had information about at least a dozen compromised companies. That's why they wanted him silenced. Charles paused. And that's why they now want to silence you. Rebecca walked to the window, observing the dawn that was beginning to color the New York sky. Charles, you said you changed the security codes, but how can we be sure there aren't other compromised accesses? Because I spent the entire night checking all the systems, and I found this. He showed a small electronic device. It was a transmitter hidden in the car we use today. They were able to track your every movement. Emily examined the device. So they knew exactly where we were the whole time. Yes, but now that we know of its existence, we can use it to our advantage, suggested Charles. We can send false information, make them believe you're going to one place when you're actually going to another. Emily's mind began to formulate a plan. Mom, what if we used this advantage to discover who else is involved? Dad collected evidence against a dozen companies. If we can expose the entire network, It would be dangerous, darling. But it's what Dad would want us to do. He didn't collect this evidence for blackmail, but to protect innocent people. Emily looked at Thor, who was watching her with his intelligent eyes. And we have the world's best detective by our side. Charles approached timidly. Ladies, if you'll allow me, I'd like to help you repair the harm I caused. I know tech giant strategies. I know how they operate. Rebecca looked at her daughter, seeing in her the same determination she had once admired in Frank. All right, but we do this together with great care and planning. As the sun rose completely over New York, the three began to outline a plan to expose the corruption network that had cost the Wilson family so much, transforming Thor not just into a protector, but into a true partner in the pursuit of justice. 3. Days had passed since Charles's revelation, and the Wilson mansion had transformed into a clandestine operations center. Emily, Rebecca, and the repentant driver worked tirelessly to decipher all the evidence left by Frank, while Thor remained in constant vigilance. "I got it!" exclaimed Emily, rising from the computer chair. The decoder intercepted a conversation between Robert Sullivan and someone called Colonel. They're planning a meeting tonight at the Financial District Business Center. Rebecca approached, reading the transcript on the screen. They mention Operation Cleanup. What could that mean? From the context, it seems they're going to try to destroy all the evidence Dad collected. And not just ours. They want to eliminate any trace of their illegal activities. Emily saved the file. Mum, this might be our only chance to record them confessing everything. Charles, who was organizing documents at a side table, approached with a concerned expression. Miss Emily, infiltrating that meeting would be extremely dangerous. These men won't hesitate to use more direct methods. That's exactly why we need to be smart. Emily stroked Thor, who immediately directed his attention to her. Remember how Thor reacted when Dr. Adams was here? He was trained to detect people who pose threats. If we take him with us... No, Rebecca interrupted firmly. I won't allow you to expose yourself like that. Mom, we don't have a choice. If we don't act now, these people will continue harming innocent children. That's what Dad would want us to do. The phone rang, interrupting the discussion. Charles answered, and after a few minutes of conversation, hung up with a somber expression. That was my contact at the security company that services the business center. The meeting is confirmed for 9 p.m., room 1502, but there's a problem. They've hired additional security for tonight. Emily began walking around the room, thinking aloud. What if we didn't try to enter the meeting, but instead stayed on the floor below? The decoder has enough range to intercept conversations up to 5 floors away. That might work, agreed Rebecca, seeing a spark of hope. It would be less risky, but still effective. There's another problem, continued Charles. My contact mentioned they saw Dr. Adams at the building this morning. She seemed to be doing a reconnaissance of the location. Thor raised his ears upon hearing Adams' name, confirming he recognized the person mentioned. The dog went to the window and began sniffing the air, showing signs of alert. Thor is detecting something, observed Emily. He always does this when he senses danger. At that moment, the phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Emily answered, activating the speakerphone. Miss Wilson? It was a female voice, but not Dr. Adams's. My name is journalist Sarah Bennett from the New York Times. I received information that you might have important evidence about corporate irregularities. Emily, Rebecca, and Charles exchanged surprised glances. How did you get our number? Emily asked cautiously. Through a reliable source who worked with your father, Dr. Henry Matthews from the district attorney's office. He told me Frank Wilson was investigating a corruption scheme before his departure. Dr. Henry, exclaimed Rebecca. It was him in the recording we heard. He was helping Frank. Exactly. And now he wants to help you expose the whole truth. Can we meet? I have information that might complement what you've already discovered. Emily hesitated. How can we be sure you are who you say you are? Ask Thor about me. I visited your house several times when your father was alive. I always brought treats for him. Homemade chicken and oatmeal biscuits. Immediately, Thor began wagging his tail and moved toward the phone, showing recognition and enthusiasm. The animal's reaction was so genuine that it dispelled any doubt. "All right, Sarah. Where can we meet?" asked Emily. "How about Central? Park near the lake in an hour. It's a public and safe location, and bring Thor. He can help confirm my identity." After the arrangement was made, the three prepared to leave. Rebecca insisted on accompanying her daughter, and Charles offered to drive, using a different car than usual to avoid being tracked. In the park, Sarah Bennett waited for them sitting. On a bench near the lake, she was a woman of approximately 40, black hair tied in a bun, wearing casual but elegant clothes. As soon as she saw Thor, she smiled and took a small package from her purse. "Chicken and oatmeal biscuits, as promised," she said, offering one to the dog, who accepted it happily. "You really knew my father," said Emily, relaxing a bit. "Frank was a man of integrity who believed in the importance of transparency in business. He approached me 6 months ago with evidence about Tech Giant and other companies. We were preparing a series of reports when he—" Sarah paused respectfully. "What evidence did he show you?" asked Rebecca. "Documents about misappropriation of funds from social projects, fraudulent contracts with the government, and something even more serious, unauthorized experiments on children from underprivileged communities. Your husband was determined to expose all of this." Emily took the flash drive from her purse. "We have all of that here and more, but we discovered they plan to destroy all the evidence tonight." Sarah leaned forward, interested. "Where?" "Financial District. Business Center, room 1502, meeting at 9 p.m. "Perfect. I have a discreet camera crew and state-of-the-art recording equipment. We can document everything without them noticing our presence." Thor approached Sarah, resting his head on her lap, showing complete trust. Emily smiled, realizing they had finally found a true ally. "Sarah, there's something else you should know," said Emily. "We discovered there's an entire network of informants working for these companies, employees from various corporations being blackmailed or bought." "This is even bigger than we imagined," murmured Sarah, making notes in her notebook. "With this information, we can expose not just Tech Giant, but the entire scheme." As the sun began to set over New York, the 5, including Thor, finalized the details of the plan that could finally bring justice to Frank Wilson's work and protect countless vulnerable children. The lights of the Financial District Business Center shone against the night sky of New York, when Emily, Rebecca, Charles, and Sarah strategically positioned themselves on the 10th floor, 3 floors below the meeting that would change their lives forever. Thor remained alert beside Emily, his heightened senses capturing every suspicious movement in the building. "The equipment is working perfectly," whispered Sarah, adjusting the decoder that Frank had left. "We're intercepting the voices with crystal clarity." Through the earphones, they could hear Robert Sullivan talking with other people arriving at room 1502. Dr. Adams's voice was easily recognizable, but there were other voices Emily couldn't identify. "Colonel, thank you for coming personally," said Robert. "The situation with the Wilson family is becoming more complicated than we expected." A deep, authoritative voice replied, "Robert, you underestimated these women. Frank Wilson trained his daughter very well. She's smarter than we calculated." "Colonel, with all due respect," Dr. Adams intervened, "we hold all the cards. Frank's video, the compromising documents, and now we know exactly where they hide the evidence." Emily froze. "How can they know where we hid the evidence?" Charles approached, whispering, "Miss, are you sure we checked all the espionage devices in the mansion?" Before they could fully process this information, they heard something that left them stunned. A fifth voice in the meeting, too familiar to ignore. "My dear Patricia, always so efficient, but I must confess I feel a weight on my conscience for involving my own family in this situation." It was Rebecca's voice. Emily's blood froze in her veins. She looked at her mother beside her, who seemed equally shocked. "Mom, that's your voice." "That's impossible, Emily. I'm here with you." Sarah quickly adjusted the equipment, confirming that the transmission was being received live. "It's not a recording. This conversation is happening now on the 15th floor. Thor began sniffing Rebecca intensely, his body language changing dramatically. The dog, trained to detect lies and inconsistencies, was clearly confused. "It can't be," murmured Charles. "Ma'am is here with us." The voice that sounded like Rebecca continued in the meeting. "Colonel, I guarantee my daughter won't discover the truth. She trusts me completely. The evidence Frank collected will be in our hands by tomorrow." Emily felt the world crumbling around her. "Mom, tell me it's not you. Tell me you're not involved in this." Rebecca, with tears in her eyes, held her daughter's hands. "Emily, I swear on your father's memory that it's not me. Someone is using my voice somehow." Sarah, with her journalistic experience, quickly made the connection. Voice cloning. It's a new technology that allows reproducing anyone's voice using artificial intelligence. They must have recordings of yours, Rebecca. But how did they get enough recordings of Mom's voice to create such a perfect clone? Asked Emily. "The phone calls," answered Charles with a sudden realization. "Over the last few months you received numerous calls from opinion polls and data confirmations. They were collecting samples of Mrs. Wilson's voice." Thor gradually calmed down, clearly recognizing that the present Rebecca was the real one. His previous agitation had been caused by confusion between the two voices. In the meeting, the fake Rebecca continued. "Frank never suspected I was passing on information about his investigations. He believed in me so much that he shared all his discoveries. They're trying to destroy Mom's reputation," exclaimed Emily, indignant. "They want everyone to believe you betrayed Dad." "It's even worse than that," said Sarah, continuing to record everything. "They're creating false evidence to justify any action they take against you." Robert Sullivan resumed speaking. "Excellent work, Rebecca. With this recorded confession, we can claim the Wilson family was involved in the scheme from the beginning. If the real evidence leaks, we'll simply say it was fabricated to cover up their own guilt." "Brilliant," agreed the colonel. "And what about the girl?" The fake Rebecca's voice responded with a coldness that made Emily shiver. "Emily is young and impressionable. After discovering her father's and my involvement, she'll be so devastated that she'll hand over everything voluntarily. And if she doesn't—" "Don't finish that sentence," growled the colonel. "We don't want anything more serious, just psychological persuasion." Sarah temporarily turned off the equipment. "We have enough material to expose their entire operation. This conversation proves they're using voice cloning technology to create false evidence and manipulate you psychologically." Emily hugged her real mother tightly. "Mom, forgive me for doubting even for a second." "You didn't doubt, darling. Your reaction was natural in such a disturbing situation." Rebecca stroked her daughter's hair. "But now we know how far they're willing to go." "We need to act quickly," said Sarah. "I'll broadcast all of this live on social media and send copies to all major news outlets simultaneously. They won't have time to prevent the disclosure." Thor positioned himself near the window, looking in the direction of the 15th floor, as if understanding that the threat to his adoptive family was centered there. "Sarah," said Emily with renewed determination, "publish everything. The evidence Dad collected, today's recordings, everything. It's time for the entire country to know the truth about these people." As Sarah began to broadcast live, revealing to the entire country the extent of the corruption and manipulation scheme, Emily looked at Thor and whispered, "Dad would be proud, wouldn't he, my friend?" The dog wagged his tail, as if completely agreeing. The truth finally was coming to light. 6 months had passed since the night that forever changed the Wilson family's life. The morning sun entered through the mansion windows in the Upper East Side, illuminating a completely transformed living room. The walls now displayed recognition certificates from child protection organizations, photos of Emily visiting underprivileged communities, and a large photograph of Frank Wilson being posthumously honored as Defender of Children's Rights. Emily, now 18, was sitting at her desk answering emails on a laptop. Her countenance showed a maturity that 6 months earlier would have been unthinkable. Thor, faithful as always, rested at her feet, but kept one eye always open, vigilant. "More thank you letters arrived," said Rebecca, entering the room with a stack of correspondence. Her appearance had also changed. The weight of secrets had been replaced by a lightness that made her eyes shine again. "How many today, Mum?" 23. This time they're from children in Chicago, Miami, and Boston. It seems the Frank Wilson Foundation is reaching every corner of the country. Rebecca sat beside her daughter, observing one of the handwritten letters by a child. "Look at this one. Thank you, Miss Emily, for giving us real computers and not those that hurt us." Emily smiled, but her eyes filled with tears. "Dad saved these children even after leaving us, and to think we almost let those monsters destroy everything." Sarah Bennett's live broadcast had been a watershed moment. Within hours, the revelations about tech giant and its corruption network spread. Throughout the country, Robert Sullivan, Dr. Patricia Adams, and the mysterious Colonel, later identified as a former military officer who commanded the corporate espionage operation, were arrested in flagrante by the FBI, who raided the meeting before they could destroy the evidence. "Remember the look on Robert's face when the feds entered the room?" said a familiar voice from the door. It was Sarah Bennett, now a frequent visitor to the mansion. The journalist had won the Pulitzer Prize for her coverage of the case, but always made a point of sharing the credit with Frank Wilson and his family. "Sarah, good to see you." Emily stood up, hugging her friend. "How was today's hearing?" "Robert, Sullivan was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Dr. Adams 10 years, and the Colonel." Sarah smiled with satisfaction. 15 years plus a $50 million fine. Thor approached Sarah, who has always brought chicken and oatmeal biscuits in her pocket. The dog had become a kind of celebrity, being recognized by the media as the detective dog who helped uncover the greatest corporate scandal of the century. "And the other companies involved?" asked Rebecca. 17 corporations are being investigated. More than 200 co-opted employees have been identified and are receiving psychological and legal support. Charles has been instrumental in helping the FBI map the entire network. Sarah settled into her favorite armchair, the same one where Frank used to sit. "Speaking of Charles, he's arriving." As if he had been summoned, Charles appeared at the door. His countenance carried a dignity that the last few months had restored to him. After confessing his involvement and fully cooperating with the investigations, he had become one of the prosecution's key witnesses. "Ladies, Sarah," he greeted respectfully, "I brought the monthly report of the Foundation's activities." The Frank Wilson Foundation had been created 3 months after the scandal. With the money recovered by the authorities, diverted values that were restored, the Foundation developed an ethical educational technology program for children from underprivileged communities, ensuring they would never again be used as guinea pigs. "Charles, you don't need to treat yourself as an employee anymore," said Emily affectionately. "You're our partner in the Foundation." "Old habits, Emily," he smiled, still adapting to the new dynamic. "But I have news that I believe will make you happy." "What news?" asked Rebecca, curious. "The first class of children your husband tried to protect has just graduated from the basic computer program. 15 boys and girls between 8 and 12 years old now know how to use computers safely and productively." Charles opened a folder with colorful photos. "And they asked to send a special message." He turned on a tablet playing a video recorded by the children. 15 smiling little faces appeared on the screen, singing in chorus, "Thank you, Uncle Frank. Thank you, Aunt Emily. Now we know that computers are for learning good things." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even Thor seemed moved, wagging his tail while watching the screen. "Dad would be so proud," whispered Emily, wiping away tears. "He is proud, darling," said Rebecca, hugging her daughter. "Wherever he is, he knows his mission was accomplished." Sarah rose, walking to the window that overlooked the garden. "You transformed a tragedy into hope. What Frank began, you've multiplied 1,000-fold. We couldn't have done it alone," said Emily, looking at each person in the room. "Sarah, you risked your career to help us. Charles, you had the courage to confess your mistakes and redeem yourself. And Mom," she turned to Rebecca, "you were the strength that kept me standing when I wanted to give up." "And Thor?" joked Sarah. "What was his role?" Emily laughed, stroking the dog who had been her companion throughout this journey. "Thor was our silent hero. He detected lies, found hidden clues, and most importantly, he never doubted who we really were." As if understanding he was being honored, Thor stood up and walked to the center of the room, where everyone could admire his majestic posture. The dog had aged a few years in just a few months, but his eyes still shone with the intelligence and loyalty that Frank had recognized from the first day. "You know what moves me the most?" said Rebecca, observing the movement on the street through the window. "Yesterday I received a call from a mother in Dallas. She said her 9-year-old daughter refused to participate in an electronic game survey because she learned in school about the dangers of digital child exploitation. A 9-year-old child, folks. She already knows how to protect herself." "That's Dad's true legacy," agreed Emily. "Not just exposing the criminals, but educating children so they're never victims again." The phone rang, and Charles answered. After a few minutes of conversation, he hung up with a huge smile. That was Dr. Henry from the District Attorney's office. Robert Sullivan's last appeal was denied by the Supreme Court. There's no more possibility of reversing the convictions. "It's over," said Sarah with a sigh of relief. "It's really over." "No, Sarah," corrected Emily, standing up and walking to Frank's portrait on the wall. "It's not over. Actually, it's just beginning." She turned to everyone in the room, her eyes shining with the same determination that had once characterized her father. "The Frank Wilson Foundation will expand to other countries. We're going to create an international network for protecting children in the digital world." "Emily, that's too ambitious," Rebecca began. "Mom, Dad always said small dreams don't inspire anyone. He started alone, investigating one company in New York. Look at what it's turned into." Emily gestured toward the thank you letters, the certificates, the photos of the benefited children. "Imagine what we can do together, with the whole world supporting us." Thor approached Emily, placing his head in her hand. The simple gesture seemed to seal a commitment. The dog and the young woman would continue the mission initiated by Frank, no matter where it took them. As the sun set over, New York, the Wilson family, now expanded to include Sarah and Charles, made plans for the future. The secrets that had almost destroyed them had transformed into strength to protect others. The mansion on the Upper East Side, which had once been a place of mysteries and fears, was now a beacon of hope for children throughout America. And Thor, the tireless guardian, remained vigilant, no longer just protecting a family, but helping to protect an entire generation of children who would grow up in a safer digital world, thanks to the courage of a man who dared to challenge the powerful, and the daughter who had the wisdom to continue his mission. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like.